Live with you simultaneously with internet streaming radio on wakeupcalldt.com's homepage, as well as on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. NFL free agency tracker. We have the opportunity to bring you every single team division by division. So let's bring in the man of the hour to help us do it, to get you caught up. Ready? I got all my notes here. So get your notepad ready and set to go as we will go through all of the teams that have been making moves here in free agency. Mr. Sofka, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing well. And Mike, I mean, this is like Christmas come early for us. What do you think about free agency so far and just how vibrant and how active it has been?
Well, it's to each his own, too. 32 teams. Each one has a different set of agenda, a different roster, so that there's different needs up and down. Sometimes it's not who you bring in. Sometimes it's who you keep in the house. So there's some good and bad across the league here. There's some interesting moves, and there's some moves yet to be made. So, yeah, it is almost like Christmas.
Yeah, and seeing where these chips are going to fall for sure is going to make for an interesting conversation this morning on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora as Mike and I get set to speak with you division on division, division by division here of going through NFL free agency and letting you know what teams are doing what here this morning, and very, very much looking forward to this. So coming off the Jacksonville conversation, I think we should go right there to the AFC South, Mike, and I want to start with, we'll start in alphabetical order and do it this way, and so that means we'll start with the Houston Texans and giving us an opportunity to speak on Houston and what they have. I'm going to write them up on the board on YouTube and Facebook as we go, but Houston bringing in the likes of Tyrod Taylor, and so we have him coming into things here as they're trying to figure out their situation with their quarterback and what they're going to do and how they're going to handle it and all that good stuff. I mean, this is a very, very interesting world that we're living in right now with the Houston Texans, as they have not really made the best sense of things, and I don't really know what Houston is trying to do or what they're hoping to do. They've had a lot of confusion, and so they bring in Tyrod Taylor at quarterback, and then at running back they're bringing in the likes of Mark Ingram is going to be coming to them. Mark Ingram, who was used sparingly in Baltimore in his second season with them. So Mark Ingram coming onto the team. They also bring in the likes of Andre Roberts at wide receiver, and they brought in keeping tight end Pharaoh Brown. So what are your thoughts? And I mean, obviously the tight end situation for them has not made a lot of sense in recent history. What do you think about the moves that the Texans have made so far? Tyrod Taylor coming in after being the starter in Buffalo and being the starter with the Chargers, and then Mark Ingram, who we know from spending time and was a great 1-2 punch in New Orleans, but thought he could make more money, I guess, or have his own hay in Baltimore. It didn't work out. And then Andre Roberts coming from the Cardinals, and Pharaoh Brown staying. What are your thoughts on Houston's move so far?
Well, Houston's trying to keep up with themselves, and it's like a dog chasing its tail. You're probably not going to catch it, and if you do, what's the reward? It's just a weird thing. They're sabotaging their only remaining viable player on their team in Deshaun Watson, and Deshaun Watson obviously doesn't want to be there. And now to muddy the waters for Deshaun Watson further, he's got this massage parlor scandal going on too. He's got 2 separate lawsuits brought against him. So it's going to taint the market for him, but at the same time, it looks like Houston's poisoning themselves to possibly move on, and maybe there is some sort of trade deal. But now with the massage thing, I don't know how that's going to impact things for Watson and Houston. Bringing in Tyrod Taylor is a good stopgap. He'll be a guy that can step up. And don't forget, he was supposed to start the season last year, but then, just before game time, had that chest problem with the injection. So, Justin Herbert got the job and, was like, yeah, you're not getting it back. You take a look at what they did with Mark Ingram. I don't believe in Mark Ingram anymore. I think he's done. I think he's shot. I think he's a great locker room guy. He's a rah-rah guy. It's a very small salary that they signed him to, and I know they know the risk. But, my question is how far down the totem pole is he? Where is he at? Most of their signings have been on defense, which is good. They need that. They brought in Shaq Lawson as well with the trade with the Dolphins, but it's give and take. They had to give up Bernard McKinney, who's a tackling machine. So I think they're doing the right things. They're trying to bulk up here going into what's going to be a tumultuous camp, I assume. But they got to get past the draft. They're gonna draft a few more defensive players, and they're gonna have to be in the market for a quarterback, I would assume, by then. I just don't see the Deshaun Watson thing working out. So again, it's kind of like we talked about at the beginning here. Sometimes it's not always who you sign. Sometimes it's who you keep.
Yeah, and that has been a big. Obviously, Houston has been consistently making bad decisions, and the fact that they're still making decisions that seem to be very anti-Deshaun Watson, bringing in a guy like Tyrod Taylor probably only is going to piss him off more. So being in a situation like this is not ideal for them at all. I don't understand what Houston's been doing the last couple of years, and they continue to confuse me. Their running backs I have not been sold on for a long time, and the fact that they are now in a situation where they're bringing in Mark Ingram, who hasn't got it done. They brought in Duke Johnson Jr., who didn't get it done, and they brought in David Johnson, who hasn't gotten it done. It's kind of like they wait for guys to kind of be, past their high points in their careers, and then they just kind of circle them in. I like Tyrod Taylor. I like the opportunity for him. I just don't like for what it means for Deshaun Watson, because it's probably just going to, like I said, piss him off more. I know that this was a trade, but I'm going to put it in here. I know we're talking about free agent frenzy, but this is part of the moves of the Indianapolis Colts. So, people with everything else going on sometimes get lost in the shuffle that Carson Wentz is there. He's young in his career. And keep in mind, the Colts went from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck to Phillip Rivers eventually, and now Carson Wentz. Arguably, they've had some amazing. They've had their transitions been fantastic, but Phillip Rivers was at the end of his career, and Carson Wentz has to stay healthy. So that is a big question mark, and hopefully he does. There's not a lot of action going on offensively with the Indianapolis Colts as far as moves here in the offseason, but they re-signed Marlon Mack, which was interesting because Jonathan Taylor came in. They drafted him as a rookie. He did well last year, did well in fantasy as well. Marlon Mack got hurt coming out of USF where I covered him. So what are your thoughts on the Carson Wentz trade and the fact that they decided to bring Marlon Mack back despite the fact that Jonathan Taylor seemingly is going to be the guy? Should fantasy owners be concerned with this?
I find it interesting that it wasn't that long ago, 5 years or so ago, that we were talking about Carson Wentz and Jared Goff as the top two picks in the draft, and now both those guys are on different teams. Yeah. Both have had different layers of success, both making it to the Super Bowl. Wentz winning the Super Bowl, although he wasn't the guy in the Super Bowl. He was part of the guy on the way there. Carson Wentz is still young. Carson Wentz still has some game in him. I don't think there's anything wrong mechanically. I'm just interested to see what a fresh start is going to bring for him. They're going to have the media availability for Carson Wentz. I think it's today, but the interesting side note here, they're not allowing anyone from Philadelphia. They're not allowing any of the Philadelphia reporters, which I find just obscene. I don't see what the cause is for that unless Carson just feels like he's been treated unfairly by the Philadelphia media. But I think they had to do something. They had to get a veteran player in there to stabilize the ship. It was obvious Jacoby Brissett wasn't going to be the answer. Carson Wentz is a guy that not only can help stabilize the ship, but he can also offer you some hope for the future. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, that's okay, because you sent a third rounder this year and a second rounder in 22. So for a guy that was a top two pick in the NFL, a guy at the most important position, quarterback, to me that's interesting. I think he's got to develop a relationship with Jack Doyle and Mo Alley-Cox. Jonathan Taylor is going to be in the fold, and now Marlon Mack, like you said. Marlon Mack is a good familiar face, but they're still got a three-headed monster there with Nyheim Hines. So I think this is going to shape into something. I don't think Indianapolis is going to be world beaters with these moves by any take, but I think there's an opportunity for them to still do something in the draft, and I think there's an opportunity for them to still bring in one or two more people, maybe even re-sign T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah, and that would be something to look at. T.Y. Hilton is still sitting out there, so it's interesting, and I like the fact that you brought that up is, can they figure out a way to kind of structure it where, maybe he has an incentive-laden contract, and that's how they bring him back, they bring him in and see what he can do and see, how he can flow with Carson Wentz. Would be good for Wentz. I'm sure he would enjoy having a guy like that to come in. Jacksonville we talked about in hour number one, but just to kind of catch everybody up, and obviously with this being a new video, Carlos Hyde is coming back to the team offensively, and so is Tyson Alu, and then they're bringing in 3 wide receivers to a group that already has a bunch of young guys. They're bringing in Jamal Agnew, who really didn't have a lot to show stat-wise in Detroit. Philip Dorsett, who's done some good things and got to play with Tom Brady, as well as playing with Andrew Luck, speaking of the Colts. And then Jacksonville will also be bringing in Marvin Jones Jr., who I like and who has saved me in fantasy a couple of years ago, was one of the guys that really was able to help me out. So what do you think about Jacksonville's moves? They bring back Carlos Hyde, they bring back Tyson Alu on the defensive side, and they bring in 3 receivers, and they also bring in Chris Manhertz as another tight end and they let one go in Josh Oliver, who we'll talk about in a little bit, in a trade. What are your thoughts on Jacksonville's moves?
Well, first off, I think Carlos Hyde was brought in for one reason, and that's familiarity. Where did he go to school? He went to school at Ohio State. He played for Urban Meyer. So when you consider that and you consider Urban's the new man on campus, he can bring in a familiar face, a guy in the backfield. He's got young running backs in James Robinson and even Raquel Armstead. So I think it's a good move to shore up that running back room, give a confidence boost to somebody who kind of knows what Urban's about, kind of knows what direction he wants to go, how he coaches, and maybe even some of the scheme. And then I look at the wide receivers. Nobody really wows me here. Jamal Agnew, Philip Dorsett, Marvin Jones. I mean, none of these guys are top-tier guys, but that's okay because they have DJ Shark and they have Laviska Shenault, who should be considered a top receiver here before long. Looks like Chris Conley, Keelan Cole, and D.D. Westbrook are going to be gone. I like the opportunity for Colin Johnson to step up as well. But the thing about the Jaguars, what they really need to do is shore up that offensive line. I think they need to go offensive line in the draft, but they really signed a lot of defensive players, and that's paramount to Urban Meyer and what he wants to do on defense. If you look at who they signed 5 defensive front guys, defensive ends, and Malcolm Brown, and our defensive tackle Malcolm Brown, Roy Robertson Harris, Smoot, Alu, and G.I. Ward. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about Alu. I know he's put on a lot of weight here in the past couple of years, and maybe he can be a fire plug. Taven Bryan hasn't worked out, so they need help. Urban Meyer's thing is this. If you have a good enough defensive line, you're going to have a good enough secondary. And if you have a good enough secondary, you're going to have a good enough – they're going to feed off each other, okay? They're going to help each other. There's going to be some coverage sacks, and there's going to be an opportunity for the quarterback to make rushed mistakes. And that's what makes a signing like Shaquille Griffin so important. Here's the guy that can blanket somebody. And Jacksonville wasn't shy about spending the money with him. 3 years, $44.5 million, $29 million guaranteed. It's good to see Jacksonville has the ability to bring in power players, bring in some other guys that could possibly complement the team and not have to worry about salary cap issues. So I think Jacksonville's on the right track. Some of these names that they signed aren't going to be on the final roster cut, but, that's football. That's the NFL.
Yeah, and staying here inside of the Fantasy Football Power Hour, proudly presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub, 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. Here with you. You could go and dine in 7 days a week. You can also call for curbside pickup, takeout, and delivery at 315-487-2222 for lunch and dinner. That's 315-487-2222. Mike and I, Mike Sofka of Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com, myself, Dan Tortora of WakeUpCallDT.com, bringing you every division. We're going to all 32 teams to give you an update on their free agency, and that involves us going to every single division by division so you can get it in pieces here and know what's going on. We started in the AFC South, and Mike, we'll go to the Titans next. The Titans offensively only did 2 moves, and that is having Anthony Ferkshire, the tight end, be here on the team. And so Anthony Ferkshire is coming there to the Titans, and Jeff Swaim is being re-signed. Jeff spent some time with the Dallas Cowboys. And then probably the biggest move that they have made, which is not offensively, is Bud Dupree coming from the Steelers to the Tennessee Titans on a defense that's already got some good things going for them. So what are your thoughts on Tennessee as we round out the AFC South? Offensively, they've only done work free agent-wise with 2 tight ends, but Bud Dupree comes in and makes that Tennessee Titans defense all the more interesting.
Yeah, well, Bud Dupree has one problem here by going to Tennessee. There's no T.J. Watt on the other side there. Bud Dupree is able to get some penetration because everybody's worried about T.J. Watt. I don't think Tennessee has that compliment for him. But, Bud Dupree getting a lot of money, 5 years, $85 million, $35 million guaranteed. I still think he's a thumper. I still think he's got some wheels. He can get off the edge. And then you take a look at the tight end situation. Jonnu Smith is gone. Now you got Anthony Ferkshire, and you agree to terms with him, but then you bring in a Jeff Swaim. I don't think any one of these names is really, overwhelming anyone. Jeff Swaim, had some time in Dallas, and he had peaks and valleys there. But interesting to me about Anthony Ferkshire, he's had flashes of brilliance as well. I think that he, being a Harvard guy, is kind of like a Ryan Fitzpatrick, where he can do it. He may not be the best athletically at his position, but he's probably one of the smartest. He can block well as well. So this is a situation where Tennessee is trying to make the most out of what they can grab onto. Yeah. I don't know if Mike Vrabel is going to be the answer after the direction they took last year, but it looks like they're making some moves in the right direction. They're shoring up that defense, but they got worries all along on both sides of the ball. They need a receiver. They're going to need help at quarterback soon. I'm not sure Tannehill's a long-term answer, but he's been doing well. So I think they were a little bit aggressive in the free agency, but it's interesting to me how that tight end position works out. I'm going to keep an eye on that for us because, one of those guys, if they don't draft anybody or bring anybody else in, which I don't know who they would, yeah, it could be Ferkshire or Swaim, and these aren't names that we were thinking of at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Jeff Swaim is one of those guys that has been able to kind of bounce around, but you kind of head scratcher a little bit as to why are they going in that direction when he really hasn't had the output that you're looking for from a tight end as far as catching the ball and getting into the end zone and whatnot. So that is going to be something to circle as Jonnu Smith is gone. He was supposed to be the heir apparent to Delaney Walker. Delaney gone too. So with that coming up, Tennessee went from having one of the top 5 tight ends in the nation to not even knowing who their tight end is going to be, which makes things very, very interesting. The next up here that we'll go to is the AFC West. And as we look at the West side of things, one of my guys from Cincinnati, very happy for him. He got himself a new contract. He was third string in Minnesota, and he's going from third string in Minnesota to a potential maybe getting more of a role here on this new team that he's going to, and that is the Denver Broncos making the decision to sign my guy Mike Boone, who I'm excited to see find his way onto this team. Mike Boone is losing that. I mean, we've obviously seen the fact that this is a team that is comfortable with what they have. They have a lot of talent, so they haven't made a lot of moves, but Denver has made the move for Mike Boone. What are your thoughts on this? They've had Devontae Booker, that didn't work. They have had Phillip Lindsay, and he got hurt. They had, they brought in Melvin Gordon. He didn't wow anybody. Where does Mike Boone set up with Denver?
I don't think he does. I mean, I'll just be quite frank with you. I'm all for the guy, but at the same time, you got a crowded backfield, and you got some guys there that can tote the rock. It's interesting to me why they would do this. Obviously, somebody's leaving the house. I don't think it's Melvin Ingram. I don't think it's Philip Lindsay. I don't even think it's Royce Freeman. So it's going to be interesting how that plays out for Mike Boone. But, sometimes different coaches, different fields, different teams, they have different needs. And sometimes we don't know all the the background action or all the reasons around moves. We don't know about other personnel decisions they may be making. So definitely an interesting one. I don't think it's overwhelming. I think the best deal they did, the two best deals they did was locking down Ronald Darby and going ahead and keeping Shelby Harris in Denver. So these are important parts to their defense. Their defense has really come on lately. You got Bradley Chubb. You got some decent guys in the secondary with Callahan and now Darby and then Kareem Jackson, Duke Dawson. So then you got guys that can, do the same thing up front, with a Von Miller. So I don't think they needed to go crazy in a free agent market. What they need is a quarterback. And I'm kind of surprised they weren't involved more so in the story of a quarterback to bring them there. Maybe even if it was a Carson Wentz. But maybe they feel he's damaged goods. So, again, we don't know all the ins and outs. But, it's obvious that the Denver Broncos still need a quarterback. I'm not sure Drew Lock is the answer.
And it's funny. They've needed a quarterback really since John Elway. And the reality of it all is they had Peyton at the end of his career. They had Tim Tebow as a test. And then since then, every single year, Mike, it's cut and paste. What you just said is what they've needed every year. What do they need, Mike? They need a quarterback. What do they need, Dan? Well, they probably should get a quarterback. And they're in a place right now where they need a quarterback again because it's just Drew Lock is not proven. Osweiler was there, then he came back. Denver needs to look at what's available, what's out there, and what they can draft. And they need to be smart about it. Maybe they need to trade about it because they haven't made that move for leadership-wise. Now, Ronald Darby and Shelby Harris coming back, that's good. Mike Boone, I hope he makes the team, and I hope he does some good things. But Denver, once again, what's the definition of insanity? And they have proven repeatedly that they don't know what they're doing at the quarterback position, which makes absolutely no sense because John Elway has been connected to them for so long. He should be able to eye talent and see it, I would think, very well. But it's not happening in Denver. The talent has not come through, and they're still in need of the same position over and over and over again, which means they're not growing. Kansas City, who let go of two of their offensive linemen, had to deal with the fact that there was injuries to the offensive line in the Super Bowl and then let go of them. Kyle Long and Joe Thuney will be on the team. They haven't made any moves at skill positions. And, when you look at, running back and wide receiver and whatnot, but they are trying to help out the offensive line, an offensive line that caused Pat Mahomes to spend most of the Super Bowl running in circles. And then they brought back Taco Charlton, who was drafted by the Dallas Cowboys back a little bit here. What are your thoughts on this? Not a lot of movement for the Kansas City Chiefs coming off of back-to-back Super Bowl appearances. What do you think about what they've done?
Yeah, they're going to be in the market for some players in the draft. I look for them to take a receiver. I look for them to continue to try to shore up that defense. They need guys on the backside. You're going to hear and see names of guys that, have been on the team but weren't able to get any play as well. So it's going to be interesting how this unfolds through the draft. I look for them to definitely take a defense, an edge rusher, a linebacker, a safety, a cornerback, a wide receiver, and offensive line. So they have their needs. It's interesting to see how the rest of this is going to play out. Some scary things I saw was they're looking at speedster guys. They're looking at fast wide receivers, the fastest guys out there, guys like, Tony from Florida. They're looking for guys that can just blaze. And I'm looking at the roster, I'm going, well, Tyreek Hill runs like a 4.2. McCall Hardman runs like a 4.3. They're looking at another 4.3 guy. It's obvious what they think the formula is or what they think makes up a good receiver for them. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the draft. I think they had to bring in a Kyle Long. That makes sense. And Joe Tooney, that shores up the offensive line. They're probably going to have to kick one of these guys over to tackle, though. So somebody might have to make a position change because they definitely need a tackle. And it's just needs like every other NFL roster, but I think they got better. I just don't think they were overly aggressive, but I think they got some quality finds. I don't like Taco Charlton, though. I don't like them re-signing him. I think he's a bust.
Yeah, and it's interesting as we step into the next team, somebody that I don't like re-signing. I mean, this guy was brought up for stuff that was off the field and locker room issues. He was in multiple places having multiple problems. And now he's with John Gruden. Richie Incognito has re-signed on a one-year deal with the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't like the move. I'm not even going to put it up on the board here. But John Brown, who was in a few different places here. John Brown was one time in Arizona. He spent some time recently in Buffalo. He was also in Baltimore. John Brown, wide receiver, going to the Raiders. And on his third team since leaving Jacksonville, Yannick Ngakoue is now with the Las Vegas Raiders. So very interesting to see this. And I told people that he was a locker room problem. If he was really that good when he got traded to Minnesota, he would have stayed. But he got traded to Minnesota, then traded midseason to Baltimore, then Baltimore didn't re-sign him, and now he's a Raider. That should show you something. This guy who thought he was hot you-know-what in Jacksonville has now been on 3 teams in less than a calendar year. What are your thoughts on the Raiders' moves?
Well, the Raiders, run a little bit different defense. He's going to be considered the outside linebacker, strong side linebacker, but his job is still to rush the quarterback. You combine that with Max Crosby and the Cleveland Federal, and they got something going on there. But my worry is, I think everything's been inflated with this cat. Everything's been inflated with him since he was in Jacksonville, in the negotiations and the wanting out of Jacksonville. I think it was just tagging on everybody else. What did they say? You don't know what you got till it's gone. He had a good thing and they had a good thing in Jacksonville. But him signing a 2-year, $26 million contract is just, it's outrageous. I'm not sure he's going to be able to recapture his glory, but he does make you accountable as an offensive line and as an OC. You have to know where he is, and you got to know how to handle him. I think they did the right thing by shoring up everybody's defense. The Raiders took in Ngakoue, Jonathan Hankins, Quentin Jefferson, Solomon Thomas. There's a blast from the past. And Nicholas Morrow. There's another blast from the past. So I think that if you look at these guys, these are solid football players. And like you had mentioned, Richie Incognito. The thing with him is he's got a nasty disposition both on and off the field. So he's not a great locker room guy, but if I was in a street fight and it was me and him against 5 others, I'd feel confident because this guy's a brawler. Now take a look at John Brown, 1-year deal. That could be hit or miss, but that's okay. It's a 1-year deal. So, hopefully this will work out for Gruden and company, but I look for them to continue to be aggressive. I look for them to do something in the draft. They are far from a good team. There's questions at quarterback. There's questions at receiver. The only question that's not on this team, in my mind, is tight end. Darren Waller, and God bless him, he's done well. But, you need guys like Henry Ruggs to step up. Otherwise, it's all for naught. So, signing all these guys is great. Giving out all this money is great. Making yourself feel good about bringing these guys in is great. But it's got to turn into wins on the field.
Yeah, and again, John Gruden has to produce that. He has to show that. They've been able to lean on Josh Jacobs and lean on the likes of Darren Waller, like you said, but outside of that, not a lot to write home about. Speaking of not a lot to write home about, the Chargers have done almost nothing in free agency. They lost Tyrod Taylor. Besides that, they signed back their kicker. Michael Badgley is back on the team, and so he will be, back with this team and giving them an opportunity. I mean, I guess, it's hard to find a good kicker sometimes, and guys have been losing their jobs, but Michael Badgley is back. Besides Michael Badgley, they have Michael Davis, corner, re-signing on a 3-year deal, and they bring in Corey Linsley, on a 5-year, $62.5 million deal. Only 26 of that is guaranteed, or pardon me, 26 will be paid over the first 2 years. But they got a center from Green Bay, so we'll put that in here. So another guy, and obviously giving him that money, he's going to be the guy. So Corey Linsley coming on to the team to try and help out Justin Herbert. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I think they did enough. I think with what's out there and what their needs are, I think they've done enough. They're going to have to be aggressive in the draft. Look, they still got some talent on the defensive side of the ball. Bringing Michael Davis isn't going to really wow anybody, but you have to have three guys that can cover. You have to have three cornerbacks just about on almost every play now. The NFL is a passing league. The Corey Linsley thing is great. He's an outstanding center, one of the top guys in the league on the offensive line in general, let alone at center. So that's definitely a find. It's definitely a steal. It's definitely worth all the money. Your center on your offensive line is the brains behind the operation. He's helping audible blocking schemes at the line. He's the leader of the line. So it's good to see, for the Chargers' sake and for their young quarterback, that they shored up the offensive line. Look for them to continue to be aggressive offensive line position in the draft, as well as they're going to keep their name afloat for some bright future guys, for some guys. But, the pickings are getting slim. There's not a lot of guys out there. There are some fashionable names, but is it a right fit for the Chargers? So I think the Chargers are on pace. I think they made some good decisions so far. And I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with here before long.
That coming from Mike Sofka of Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com and our joint venture of Winning Fantasy Football. You can join the Facebook group Winning Fantasy Football by going to Facebook and simply typing in the search bar Winning Fantasy Football and clicking join. It is that easy to do, so make sure you do that today, as Mike and I are inside of the Fantasy Football Power Hour, proudly presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub, 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. You can get to them Monday through Sunday for indoor dining. You can also call them at 315-487-2222 for curbside pickup, takeout, and delivery. That's 315-487-2222 for the Wildcat. So make sure that you do that today and get in touch with them. With that being stated, Mike and I giving you the free agent tracker, letting you know what's going on, updating you on free agency for every single team in the NFL, going division by division, so you can get a true look at what the division looks like with these teams up against one another that'll play each other twice a season. What are they doing? What are they focusing on? What is your favorite team? What is their move that they've been making, or a move that you hope that they're going to make? So a lot of great stuff here on the show that all has fantasy implications. The next one to go is the AFC North, and we have an opportunity to start in the AFC North with the Baltimore Ravens and to speak on what they've been doing. And so the Baltimore Ravens really haven't done a crazy amount offensively as far as the moves that they have been making. The Baltimore Ravens staying relatively quiet in that respect. They have Ken Zeitler, who's an offensive guard, coming there on a 3-year deal. And then they went defensive line the rest of the way, except for another guy that they're bringing in here that I want to make mention of because he never caught on in Jacksonville, and that is their tight end, Josh Oliver, coming on to the team. Josh Oliver got hurt in his first season in Jacksonville. Then he got hurt again, and Jacksonville shed him in a trade and sent him over to Baltimore, who already has one of the top, if not, the I would say probably a top 3 is where Mike and I had him before, and he's a guy that deservedly so should be there. And Mark Andrews, what do you think about Baltimore taking Josh Oliver from Jacksonville? Probably one of the best moves Jacksonville's made in free agency is shedding a guy that they drafted to try and be the future at tight end that has been injured the 2 years he's been in the NFL.
Well, it's a fresh start. It's a new opportunity for Josh Oliver, but I don't think he's going to, make tremendous upstrides. I don't think he's going to unseat Mark Andrews. I don't know enough. I haven't seen enough of Josh Oliver to think that he can supersede Nick Boyle in blocking or Mark Andrews at the pass catching at the H position tight end. I'm looking at Pernell McPhee. That was an important re-sign they got. He's the rush guy. And Derek Wolfe, they were able to restructure things. They re-signed him to a 3-year deal. I think they like the pressure that he can give up front. You combine that with Calais Campbell. Now you got Patrick Queen and Malik Harrison. Things are shoring up. The backside of the defense is shoring up as well with Marlon Humphrey and Chuck Clark and Marcus Peters. I think that their work is still in front of them. I still like to see a wide receiver. The challenge is no free agent wide receiver wants to go there. They don't think that, they're going to catch a lot of passes with Lamar handling the ball and running like 30% of the time. So I think that, that kind of – and you got Marquise Hollywood Brown there as well. Devin Duvernay might do some things. Miles Boykin, hopefully he's going to turn out. So I would be surprised that they don't draft or sign another free agent wide receiver. But, they're doing the right thing at where they're at now. They're re-signing the guys they need to re-sign on defense, and that's paramount. And like you had mentioned with Kevin Zeitler, they did shore up the offensive line a little bit with a 3-year deal with him.
Yeah, so, Baltimore making some moves here, not a ton, and we'll see, if Josh Oliver can catch on. God willing, he will and won't be a forgotten man, as he's still kind of never had a rookie season in the NFL. Cincinnati Bengals, speaking of Jacksonville, they had this guy on their roster, and I thought that he would be a serviceable backup to Blake Bortles, and then all of a sudden they let him go. Well, Cincinnati has re-signed him, so Brandon Allen, a little insurance policy with the fact that Cincinnati knows what it's like to have their number one guy, their ace, that they had coming into this season not be the guy that was healthy for you all season, and that being Joe Burrow, that came in, did some good things fantasy-wise, got me some very, very good points, but they got to be ready. And Brandon Allen I don't think is bad by any stretch of the imagination. He's on a 1-year contract, and he will be back at Cincinnati. Besides that, all of their moves have been made on the defensive side, and they re-signed long snapper Clark Harris. What are your thoughts on Cincinnati being relatively quiet and very quiet offensively in free agency?
Yeah, well, their defense has been the challenge for them. They need to get consistent pass rush. Carlos Dunlap has been genesis from there last year. Sam Hubbard's been able to fill in nicely. Trey Hendrickson I worry about because he doesn't have a Cameron Jordan on the other side. So look for them to still be active and looking for another edge or a rush guy. And then I'm looking at the offense. I like some of the pieces. Joe Burrow obviously coming back from the injury. Joe Mixon, Giovanni Bernard. I still believe in some of these guys. The Brandon Allen thing is more so just to protect them right now. You're going to have at least 3 quarterbacks. I don't think Ryan Finley's going to be around. He didn't wow anybody. But look at what they got going on. They're in conversation right now with Kenny Golladay. They have T. Higgins. They have Tyler Boyd. Man, you put Kenny Golladay in that Auden Tate spot on the left, and Joe Burrow's going to have a field day every game getting the ball to these guys. So I think they're on pace. The Joe Burrow thing was unfortunate last year. That set them back a little bit as a team, but I think they're going to be the better for it in the long term. Hopefully they'll have a good draft.
Yeah, Cincinnati has some work to do, but the likes of Joe Burrow as well as T. Higgins being out there like those, that 1-2 punch, that's a beautiful thing to see. And obviously Cincinnati has to work on their defense, and hopefully they will continue to do that. Cleveland has been very quiet. They've only had one free agent signing on offense, and that is Rashard Higgins. Rashard Higgins, who is back on the team. They're looking for a guy to be their number 2 guy because they haven't had that. Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr., neither one of them has been consistent. Odell got hurt last year. Rashard Higgins had to step up, had a perfect opportunity to prove himself. I don't think he did, but they re-signed him for a year. What are your thoughts on Cleveland so far?
Yeah, Cleveland's following. If you follow along with what people are doing, they're re-signing and signing a lot of defensive players. Most of the offensive talent is going to teams that are that one player away, that one position away. Bringing back Rashard Higgins was important. I think he's a great locker room guy. He's a great team player. He seems to pop up when he's needed. But you know what? You know what's interesting to me is I think with Jarvis Landry and Donovan Peoples-Jones coming on last year, I think they played better without Odell Beckham, without the need for Baker Mayfield to have that in the back of his head. Oh my gosh, I got to figure out a way to get the ball to Odell instead of reading the field and taking what the defense is giving you. You know, they got the excellent run game with Chubb and Hunt. So I think offensive side, they're fine. They do need probably another receiver. They're going to need somebody to step up at tight end.
Everybody, this
Hooper
is
did
Dan
fine last
Tortora
year.
hanging out with you with
Touted for
Sports
half
Meets
the
Life
year.
on Wake Up
Harrison
Call
Bryant
with
might
Dan
come
Tortora,
on, so
and
there's
we
something
are
to look at. But I don't think any of the defensive guys they signed made a big splash outside of John Johnson. I think he was a key find for them at the safety position. Hopefully Cleveland will be able to right the ship this year, and it'll be interesting to me to see if Odell is on the team come week 1 kickoff. Will he be traded?
Yeah, and that's a big question that comes up here is will we see that trade come through? Will that actually happen here? As Odell is another guy that just you go from the top to you go from the top of the heap to the bottom of the heap, and that's something that has just Antonio Brown, God bless him, just got to win a Super Bowl and whatnot, but it's been a very interesting world to see the fact that Odell Beckham just really, I'm not surprised, again, dealing with the Jalen Ramsey issue in Jacksonville that I had there, that I didn't have, but that they had, and me seeing it, just what he was to that team and realizing that Odell is the same type of thing. He's a really talented guy, but he's kind of a pain in the butt to deal with. And when a guy's about me and not about we, that's when you see a team like Cleveland really not go anywhere, and so nobody should be surprised about that. So getting over to Pittsburgh, the team that typically does get somewhere, they are very quiet too. Zach Banner is back on the offensive line. B.J. Finney on the offensive line as well. Cam Sutton is staying in Pittsburgh at corner, and the only offensive move that they've made is bringing a guy who has been around a little bit and having him come back here for some depth, and that is Ray McCloud. And Ray McCloud's a guy that I covered when he was a member of the Clemson Tigers. So what are your thoughts on Pittsburgh being relatively quiet? And remember, James Conner still needs to be re-signed.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're believing in James Conner much anymore. I think they may move on to Benny Snell and draft another running back. Trey Edmonds should be in the mix as well as Jalen Samuels. But the biggest get away, I should say, is Juju Smith-Schuster not finding a way to bring him back. So he has yet to land somewhere. But, he's a guy that looked like he was going to be the number 1 last year and didn't really play like a number 1. But they had some upside. They had some outstanding play from Deontay Johnson and from Chase Claypool. James Washington has been a find for them. They always seem to draft the right guys at the wide receiver position. So I don't think McCloud is going to be a significant signing. The significant sign is Zach Banner. Obviously, Villanueva is still in the question mark phase here. There's an opportunity for either him or Okafor to slide over to left tackle. Maybe Banner, because they just signed him to a pretty decent deal. I don't think they've done enough, but I still think there's a long way to go. Pittsburgh always seems to make the right personnel decisions to an extent. So I believe in what they're doing. I believe in where they're at right now. They're not a team that overspends. They're a team that drafts well and makes smart free agent moves. And maybe some of those other moves weren't smart for them. That's why there's so few.
Yeah, for Pittsburgh, again, you look at the fact that they were willing, and Pittsburgh's one of those old school teams, right? It's about, they don't care about, okay, if you're really talented, but you're a pain in the butt to deal with, they'll let you go. They did it with Antonio Brown. They did it with Le'Veon Bell. And look at it now. Who came up to number 1 when Antonio Brown left? Juju Smith-Schuster. He's still out there. Who came up to number 1 when Le'Veon Bell left? James Conner. He's still out there. And not that James Conner is a bad attitude guy, because I don't think that at all by any stretch of the imagination. It's just the fact that Pittsburgh is not, they're not one of those teams to jockey and tell them like, hey, I'm really talented, you need me, because they've proven that they don't. So, and or at least they've proven that they're they're not going to be held down by anybody and threatened by anybody or be in a situation where they feel like they can't survive without one of the players. So just kind of interesting how we saw wide receiver running back starters let go. Now we're seeing wide receiver running back starters, and they're not the ones they've signed. You signed Ray McLeod, but Juju, nothing yet, and nothing on James Conner. So interesting to continue to watch the developments of the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Buffalo Bills let go of John Brown, as I stated earlier, who went out to the Vegas Raiders, and they're bringing in Emmanuel Sanders, a man who is a journeyman who probably had his best hay when he was in Denver a little bit ago. Emmanuel Sanders coming on to the Buffalo Bills. What are your thoughts on them adding him in? They obviously have had Cole Beasley and company there, and the bread and butter is Stephon Diggs. What do you think about Emmanuel Sanders being in Buffalo and Buffalo's moves so far?
I think that's an outstanding move on Buffalo's part. I think it works in conjunction the same day, so there's some sort of backdoor deal here because the same day, all of a sudden, New Orleans releases him from his contract, terminates his contract, is the right phraseology there, and he signs a one-year deal with the Bills. Look at the Bills at receiver. Gabriel Davis, who's coming on strong as a young player. Stephon Diggs. And then Cole Beasley seems to be that squirrely slot guy. So I like what they're doing. They're putting good speedster and reliable guys around the quarterback, Josh Allen. So I think that's excellent. They're up the offensive line a little bit with Darrell Williams and John Feliciano. Matt Milano agreed to a 4-year deal, $21.5 million over the first 2 years, $41.5 million contract over 4 years. Levi Wallace brought in, and I just don't know how close they are on defense. I don't think Levi Wallace is the answer for Josh Norman, who's probably not going to be around. I do like Taron Johnson as the nickelback and Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. So I think defensively they're okay. Ed Oliver up front, Jerry Hughes. So all in all, Buffalo's a solid team. They didn't have to make a huge splash. They just had to make the right moves that they felt good about for themselves, their locker room, and maybe pick them up another win or two this year.
Yeah, and Levi Wallace, the first player I ever interviewed from Alabama, coming back to the team on a one-year deal at corner, and Matt Milano, who I obviously spent time with when he was a Boston College Eagle. Very happy they drafted him, and then they did right by him on a 4-year, $41.5 million contract with 21.5 of that, like Mike said, over the first 2 years, and then having some offensive lineman help. Darrell Williams signing 3 years, John Feliciano signing 3 years as well, and then Emmanuel Sanders bringing him in for a year and having him work with Gabriel Davis as well as Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley. It's a great. I think Buffalo, of all the teams we talked about, I'd probably give them somewhere around an A minus right now when we're talking about moves that they've made up to this point. The Miami Dolphins, they decided to bring in for 1 year, $5 million. This man has been around the block. The funny thing about it is he is now back in the division of the AFC, or pardon me. He's been in this division before, but he's only been in the AFC, and that's Jacoby Brissett. So he started with the Patriots, and he was a third stringer, and he played when Brady went down, and Brady's backup went down as well. So, which I think at the time was Jimmy Garoppolo. But Jacoby Brissett's back in the AFC East, but has only been in the AFC and spent time as a starter for the Colts when Andrew Luck decided to retire 2 weeks before the season. And now with them bringing in Carson Wentz, they let him go to Miami. He'll be behind Tua. I think this is a nice move. Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's 57 years old, Jacoby Brissett coming in, who is a lot younger, and being there with Tua is kind of interesting to see this move being made. I like it for Jacoby. I hope he can stick around, maybe make some hay for himself and catch the eye of another team and get an opportunity coming out of NC State. And then I said this, and I've been talking about this for a while, that the Los Angeles Rams had a bunch of guys, and they needed to figure out who was staying and who was going, because they tried them all as the starting running back, and none of them have panned out yet as a starter. Cam Akers they drafted, so he's obviously staying. He's only spent a year there. And Darrell Henderson Jr., they drafted him the year before that. Two guys that I covered in college. So that means Malcolm Brown had an open opportunity, and he is going down to Miami. So Jacoby Brissett behind Tua, Malcolm Brown on a 1-year tester deal, $1.75 million. It's fully guaranteed to go to Miami. What are your thoughts on that? They also help out their offensive line with Adam Pankey re-signing, and then a trade with the Tennessee Titans that sends Isaiah Wilson to the Miami Dolphins and a 2022 7th-round pick in exchange for a 2021 7th-round selection. So they get another offensive lineman in Miami and Isaiah Wilson by trading 7th-round picks this year and next year, and then they bring him in. So really not a high risk for the Miami Dolphins to bring in Isaiah Wilson, Adam Pankey re-signing, and then they went defense with the rest of it and then signed Michael Pallardy as their punter on a 1-year deal. So what are your thoughts on the Miami Dolphins bringing in Brissett? Malcolm Brown, who did some good things fantasy-wise with the Rams last year, is now in an opportunity in Miami. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the Malcolm Brown thing is interesting. I think it's going to be more of a stable force in that backfield. They got some young guys from Washington, Myles Gaskin and Salvin Ahmed, who both played well for the situation. Surprised Matt Breitis getting away. DeAndre Washington getting away is not a big deal. But the biggest deal they did was Isaiah Wilson. Anytime you can trade 2 7th-round picks for a first-round pick, because that's what Isaiah Wilson was not too long ago. He was a first-round pick. Okay, was he a bust? I don't know if he was a bust. Maybe he just needs a fresh start. This is a guy, anytime I can trade a couple 7th-rounders and get a first-rounder, like you said, it's a low-risk situation. So I really like that move. Whenever you can do that, they did bring in, or they did re-sign, I should say, Adam Pankey as well. I think the Benardrick McKinney thing from Houston is huge. He's a tackling machine, and they needed that guy. They needed a guy who can be the guy who's going to be out there making all the tackles. So the Jacoby Brissett thing just shores up the idea that Tua is the guy. Lots of talking heads on TV are always saying, oh, they're going to, Miami's going to draft a quarterback, and stop. Just stop. What that means is Brissett's the backup. Tua's there. Brissett is at the point in his career where he's no longer the young guy. He's no longer the up-and-comer with a lot of upside. He's the guy that's been up and down. He's the guy that's been through some situations and can be the calming effect on the sideline for Tua. Don't forget, he had Ryan Fitzpatrick in that role last year, and I think that did him well. I think Tua's going to be their quarterback. I think Jacoby Brissett's going to help him along the way, show him some things that he sees from the NFL because he's been around a little bit. I think the Dolphins are right on track.
Yeah, Dolphins making some moves, and it seems like, hopefully this will be a brighter future. They've been rebuilding since they lost Dan Marino, and now it actually looks like maybe they're moving in the right direction. So with that being said, how much time we got on the clock? It's 11 o'clock. Well, this will probably take us to 12:47. The New England Patriots have, and I'll put them up here too, the New England Patriots re-signed Cam Newton at quarterback, brought in Nelson Aguilar on a 2-year contract at wide receiver, signed a 3-year deal to bring in Kendrick Bourne at wide receiver, brought in 2 starting tight ends, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, after drafting 2 guys that didn't pan out, losing Rob Gronkowski to Tampa Bay. Trent Brown was acquired in a trade with the Raiders at offensive tackle. They bring in Ted Karras, their center. They make moves on the defensive line. They make moves at linebacker. Kyle Van Noy is back. Justin Bethel at corner. Jalen Mills at safety. I guess hell hath no fury like a Belichick scorned. So, Mike, I will open the door to you. As soon as the door was open in NFL free agency, Bill Belichick was spending money like, this was, it looked like a rap video, essentially, is what Bill Belichick was doing. I wanted to see him with my man Flavor Flav wearing a gold chain with a clock on it, telling people what time it is. What are your thoughts on the New England Patriots and the moves they made?
Well, it's like mom and dad left on vacation and left the kids at the house with the credit card. They went on a spending spree, and I think that's good. They needed that. They had a lot of cap space available. They addressed the elephant in the room with bringing back and making the commitment to bring back Cam Newton. I'm sure they were looking at making plays, and I'm sure they're going to look at the draft for a quarterback as well. But, bringing in Nelson Aguilar, I think, was huge. I do like that play for them. Just on a 2-year deal. The most interesting thing to me was they brought in Jonnu Smith on day 1, and then on Tuesday, day 2, They bring in Hunter Henry. Now, you look at the math, and I get it, and this is a flashback to 2011 with Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski, and I like that. And other teams have tried to mimic that, a la Philadelphia with Ertz and Goddard, and that's a formula that worked well for the Patriots. I look for it to continue to work well for them. I just question the money they're spending, because you take a look at Jonnu Smith's contract, 4-year, $50 million, 31.25 guaranteed. Then you take a look at Hunter Henry's 3-year deal, $37.5 million, that includes $25 million guaranteed. So then in the next 3 years, they're going to give up $56 million to the tight end position.
Yeah.
That's huge. Nobody else is doing that. But I believe in both these guys. I think Jonnu Smith is a better blocker than he is a receiver, and I think Hunter Henry's a better receiver than he is a blocker. I think they can work well and complement each other. You take a look at what they did with Julian Edelman, I think is going to come back at 155 years old off injury. Nelson Aguilar has proved himself to some extent. I'm wondering if the bust there isn't N'Keal Harry, and was that why they brought in Kendrick Bourne? Kendrick Bourne can be that guy in the slot. So it looks to me like they're on the right track. And again, half their guys that they signed were, defense, and they needed to shore that up. You mentioned Kyle Van Noy, Matt Judon. That's going to be huge off the edge there. And then I take a look at what they did on the offensive line by trading for Trent Brown. Again, this is a situation where there's not a lot of risk for them. They went with a 7th round pick, so they see value. And New England always seems to be that team. They have the Patriot way and do your job, and a lot of these things you see matriculate through the NFL. But New England has a way of turning guys around. They have guys that are bad boys or one-offs or one year away from being done in a league, and somehow they get production out of these guys. I think they bring them in, they snap them in, and if you don't comply, if you don't do the right thing from day one, you're gone. And I think these guys know that. I don't think it's a last chance use situation, but it is a situation where they do tend to get the best and the most out of the players they acquire. So I think these are excellent moves. I think New England's on the way, and you could see the fire in Belichick's eyes when Brady goes to Tampa and wins a Super Bowl. Now everybody's answered the question there in their mind. Was it Brady or was it Belichick? Well, right now it looks like it was Brady.
Yeah, so now Belichick wants to prove himself. This is a big old chess match, and Bill Belichick, his pissed off face is also his happy face, so you can't tell the difference. But I think his pissed off face is on right now. The New York Jets, to finish off the AFC here, Josh Adams is coming back at running back, as they've really tried to figure that out for a long time. Corey Davis, the former Western Michigan Bronco, agreed on a 3-year deal, $37.5 million after being a high draft pick, a 5th overall, I believe, by the Tennessee Titans, and it just didn't ever pan out there. What are your thoughts on what the Jets have done? They gave Marcus May, their safety, the franchise tag. What are your thoughts on the Jets' moves at this point in free agency?
Yeah, I think that the Sam Darnold days are over. That's just the vibe I'm getting from what they're positioning and what all the talking heads are saying as far as quarterback situation. Running back situation is interesting to me. I don't think Josh Adams is the answer. Looks like LaMichael Perrine might get the nod. Christopher Herndon, if he's healthy, he's a pretty good tight end. But I'm taking a look at Corey Davis. That might be a good thing for the Jets. Corey Davis, of course, looked like heck for like 3 years running. Then last year, magically in a contract year, imagine that. Now he signs a 3-year, $37.5 million deal. It looks like he's going to be the number 1 receiver. These guys still have Denzel Smith in the fold, Josh Doxson as well. I don't think these are names that are going to floor us. I think they're going to take another wide receiver in the draft. I think they're going to look for a running back in the draft. And I think they're going to take a quarterback, Zach Wilson. So could see Sam Darnold going elsewhere as well. They need more help on defense. They signed Gerard Davis, former Florida Gator, 1-year, $7 million deal. But again, I don't think he's the answer either. But he's going to be the answer for now. They're going to go strong on defense in the draft as well.
Yeah, and for you, what do you think about the Sam Darnold situation? Whose fault was it ultimately, in your opinion, of why Sam Darnold just didn't pan out with the Jets?
Well, there's always that saying, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken poop. I'm not going to make you a great cake. Bill Parcells used to say, you want me to bake this great cake, but you won't let me shop for the ingredients. So there's been such a turmoil and such a turnover in New York, it's hard to see what's happening. I do like the fact that Robert Saleh is the coach. I do like the fact that Mike LaFleur, yeah, that name, he's the OC coordinator there. So I think they're on the way up. It's a big market, so I think that they're able to maybe bring in some other quality players. They just need to take the next step. And that next step for them is in the draft. They have to make a move at quarterback. I think Sam Darnold's getting a bad shake here, but, you know, it is what it is. This is the NFL. It's not for long. And you see teams, look at the Josh Rosen situation from a couple years ago. Josh Rosen was a first-round pick. They traded him to Miami. Miami was like, yeah, no, we're going to go ahead and take Tua now. So, I mean, as quick as you come up, you can go down, and that's the weird thing about the NFL. It's a very skinny window of opportunity you have to prove yourself, and you better prove yourself during that skinny window, otherwise you're going to be gone.
Yeah, you know, and Sam Darnold seeing ghosts didn't help out by any stretch of the imagination either. So we'll take a step aside for a fast break. When Mike and I come back, we'll head to the NFC. We are giving you every single team, division by division. We are breaking down everything that's happened in free agency so far in the NFL because it's been so incredibly busy. We wanted to do one show to bring it all together. And folks, it's going to continue. It's going to keep rolling on as we roll all the way to the NFL draft coming up here in the not-too-distant future. So speaking on NFL free agency frenzy here in the Fantasy Football Power Hour, proudly presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub, Mike Sofka of Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com, and our joint venture on Facebook, the Winning Fantasy Football Group. You could join that for free by typing in Winning Fantasy Football on your Facebook search bar today. And, of course, myself, Dan Tortora of WakeUpCallDT.com. We will be back after this fast break. And the Wildcat, want to give them a special thank you once again. Dine in 7 days a week on 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York, in the Home Depot Plaza, right off the highway. And, of course, you could get curbside pickup, takeout, and delivery by calling 315-487-2222. That's 315-487-2222 for the Wildcat. We'll spin back around inside the Cafe Kubal studios right after this as we take a look at the board for the NFC and their free agency.
Carvel DeWitt, it's what happy tastes like. Do you know why? Because we make ice cream. Creamy, rich, flavorful ice cream. Not yogurt or iced milk like some of our competitors. Ice cream. Fresh, by hand, daily. For the calorie conscious, we have something new for you. Our new Carvelite. Same great flavor, creaminess, and texture of our regular ice cream with only 35 calories an ounce. So whether you want an ice cream cake, flying saucer, dasher, carvalanche, hard or soft ice cream, we will satisfy your craving with our fresh, handmade regular or new Carvelite ice cream. Carvel DeWitt. It's what happy tastes like.
Cafe Kubal offers same-day local delivery of our products, offering no delivery charge for Onondaga County. Shop cafekubal.com for fresh roasted coffee beans, cold brew, travel mugs, and all your essential Cafe Kubal needs. Cafe Kubal, coffee for the soul.
The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is located on 3680 Milton Avenue in the Home Depot Plaza. It is your family-friendly sports bar and restaurant. Folks, some sports bars aren't family-friendly. Some family-friendly restaurants are not sports bars. The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is proud to be both. It is that marriage that you've been looking for years. The Wildcat Sports Pub is your home base for your sports bar and restaurant needs, games for the kids, indoor and outdoor activities, and enough things on the menu to come back every single week and get to try something new. They're open Sundays from noon to 8 p.m., Monday through Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Thursday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to midnight. For reservations and party information, call 315-487-2222 for the Wildcat family-friendly sports pub and restaurant. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. We are inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios. Cafe Kubal with locations all throughout Syracuse, 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 208 North Townsend Street, and 401 South Salina Street. You'll find them at all those locations, as well as in Manlius at their newest location at 343 Fayette Street in Manlius. Make sure you head out to Cafe Kubal today and support local. I need to go get myself a chai and warm myself up here in upstate New York, so make sure you go and get your favorites today and stay warm and stay well. And some of you that like the iced coffee, you can make that happen as well, of course. So make sure that you head out and support local. And speaking of local, we're inside of the Fantasy Football Power Hour, proudly presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub, the perfect place to watch any game, anytime throughout the week, right there in Camillus on 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. Free agent frenzy is what we're talking about here. We just covered the entire AFC, and now it's time to cover the NFC here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora with my partner Mike Sofka, who's with me every Wednesday for the Fantasy Football Power Hour. We moved it to Thursday this week due to the bracket challenge, and then having Papa Joe talk about the Jaguars leads us perfectly into free agency. So this week we had the change. We'll be back at our normal time, normal place next week, Wednesday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. So make sure you're checking us out and having some fun with us there, as I appreciate Mike, as always, for all the work that he puts forward and he does with the world of fantasy football. So we're on the NFC side. We're doing our free agency tracker. We got the board up, and we're doing this division by division, which is a lot of fun for me. Gives me an opportunity to give you a complete look at the divisions and who they're choosing, and it gives us an opportunity to write in those players that are either staying or coming in. So I hope you are enjoying our interactive efforts here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora to bring you something new and exciting and fun to add to the conversation that we've been bringing you for years here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, as well as on facebook.com/livenowdt. So with that being said, Mr. Sofka, we are inside of the NFC South, and the NFC South has essentially become Atlanta Project, Carolina Project, New Orleans Project, Tampa Bay, Tom Brady, and probably fighting for another Super Bowl. So it's amazing how, and I said this to Papa Joe in hour one, how much things have changed being in this division where 3 out of 4 teams made it to the playoffs. The only team that didn't was Tampa, and now Tampa is the only team that looks like they got their you-know-what together. So let's start in Atlanta. What are your thoughts on the Atlanta Falcons? They brought in Lee Smith, tight end, in a trade. We all know that, and I didn't think it was gonna. The Hayden Hurst trade did not work. What do you think about what Atlanta's done? Very, very quiet on offense, and they just restructured Matt Ryan's contract at quarterback as well.
Yeah, they needed to restructure his contract if they wanted to keep him around. They're going to need to be aggressive. They're going to need to be aggressive on defense. They need some depth. If it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. So, maybe this is, Arthur Smith and company showing some restraint. They're just not signing people to sign people. So maybe this is a good sign for Atlanta. Hayden Hurst needs to turn it up. Otherwise, they're going to be looking for another tight end. I think Dante Fowler was overpaid as the rush guy on the defensive end. Dante Fowler, former Florida Gator, played with the Jaguars. I like the guy, but at the same time, he played next to Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold was able to tie up 2, sometimes 3 blockers to free up Dante Fowler. So, good for him for being able to cash in on that and get a good chunk of money from Atlanta. But the thing about it is they're going to need some replacement players. They're going to need a running back. They're going to have to draft one. You can't continue on this trend. Brian Hill's not going to work. I don't know if Todd Gurley's going to be back. Ito Smith is not the guy. Quadri Allison is not the guy. They tried to be at times. So this is a team in flux right now. They have a lot of offensive weapons. Their quarterback is aging. His window's getting tighter. Look for them to look at a quarterback as well. So they have their work cut out for them. But sometimes not signing a bunch of guys is showing that necessary restraint and maturity with what you got to work with and knowing where you're going to get the answers. And if the answer isn't a free agent, don't sign them.
Yeah, and that's the reality of it all. You don't just sign it to sign it. We talked about that with Jacksonville. You don't just spend the money because you have it. You don't. If you get a bunch of money, you don't go to a grocery store and just buy a ton of candy because you got the money. Put it away. Get something you need. If I needed a new set of headphones, I'm not going and buying like 9,000 Reese's. I'm gonna buy a few. I'll buy a couple Reese's for me, but you don't need to go crazy. So Atlanta, what I'm trying to say is they're not going for the crumbs. They're either going for the big sandwich or they're not going for it, and I respect that. Carolina Panthers, skill-wise position for like wide receiver, tight end, all that good stuff, running back, they're not doing any of that. Hopefully Christian McCaffrey will be back on the right side of things. Mike Davis is still out there, the backup that people picked up when Christian McCaffrey went down. But Carolina did do some work here on their offensive line. They franchise tagged their offensive lineman Taylor Moton, so they're bringing Taylor Moton back, and hopefully that'll be able to help them out a little bit. And they also, offensive line-wise, decided on a 3-year deal, $11.5 million with $6 million guaranteed to Pat Elflein is coming onto the team. So what are your thoughts on the moves that Carolina has made? I mean, it's been a relatively quiet road here in Carolina. So what are your thoughts on the Carolina Panthers up to this point?
Look, I like Matt Rule, and I like the fact that he brought in a guy from Temple, Robbie Anderson, and the guy made a splash. And, they got DJ Moore on the other side. Well, he tried to make a splash this time on a defender in Hassan Reddick, and while he signed him to a fat contract, I think this is a red flag. I don't think this is a quality sign simply because of the value of it. $6 million guaranteed. It's a 1-year deal. It's a prove yourself deal. But Hassan Reddick's numbers were falsely inflated last year. He had like 12 and a half sacks, but he only had like 45 or so QB pressures and hurries. What that translates to is a high conversion rate on the sacks. What that means is he was very lucky. They can account. I went through each of his sacks. There was one where he wasn't blocked. There was 2 under this situation, 1 under, and it gave pause to how he got those numbers. So I think he's not going to be able to repeat that. I think he's going to be a quality NFL player. I just don't think he's going to repeat from last year, Hassan Reddick of Temple fame, and of course Matt Rule from Temple. So I can see that, but I don't think it was strictly a homer type pick. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that he's doing it just because the guy went to Temple, but it doesn't hurt. They're bringing in. They agreed to terms with Denzel Perryman as well. He might be getting a little long in the tooth. Morgan Fox. So, a lot of these guys, we're seeing a familiar pattern here. Offensive linemen and defensive players. That's what the need is right now. It looks like they pretty much have things locked in. I hope they get another tight end, but I don't know where they're going to get one from. Ian Thomas is going to have to be the guy. They're going to have to draft one, and they're probably not in a position to draft a very good one. So interesting to see how that's going to play out with Ian Thomas. Christian McCaffrey should be back, but it looks like they're jettisoning Mike Davis, so they're probably going to draft a running back as well to complement Christian McCaffrey. So the work's still ahead of them. I still think they had a mixed bag on their signing here. And, Taylor Moton getting the franchise tag was critical to the offensive tackle. So I think they're making the right moves at the right time so far. And again, I question the Hassan Reddick, and I look for them to be very active in the draft.
Yeah, we'll see what Carolina does. Is they're trying to figure out their future at quarterback and their future in general. I mean, Christian McCaffrey's there, but you need to build around him or you're not going to have him for long. Speaking of building around somebody and future, this guy is on a 1-year deal, and his salary that he was getting, his base salary is only $1 million, but his signing bonus was $4.5 million, making it $5.5 million. It could be $12.5 million with incentives at the end of the day. Signing a 1-year deal is Jameis Winston to stay with the New Orleans Saints as they no longer have Drew Brees. Trying to work out Taysom Hill, but it hasn't been done yet. And then re-signing on a 1-year contract. This guy's kind of been all over the place since starting out in Green Bay, and one of the biggest questions is if you had a fantasy league on ESPN like ours is, was Ty Montgomery a wide receiver or a running back, because you didn't know where they were going to allow you to put him in the lineup. Ty Montgomery staying with New Orleans with Alvin Kamara, and Marcus Williams, their safety, received the franchise tag. What are your thoughts on New Orleans? Do they go after a quarterback in the draft? Do they just rely on a new age with Taysom Hill and Sean Payton having to kind of challenge himself in that respect. What does New Orleans do from here?
Well, a lot of people look at the situation like, oh, it's Taysom Hill. It's Taysom Hill. They decided to keep him around first, and then they did end up signing Jameis Winston. But they were flirting with Russell Wilson. They were flirting with a lot of other options, and it just didn't pan out. So they went with a secure thing and a low-risk, low-money contract because they don't have a lot of money. So whatever move they would make would still take a lot of effort, a lot of restructuring and so forth, and they've been doing that. They've been cleaning house. They're definitely on the opposite. They're definitely on the opposite side of New England and Jacksonville as far as salary cap. But you take a look at their offense. I think it's going to be Winston. And the reason why I think it's going to be Winston and not Hill is Winston is an NFL quarterback. He's a prototype outside of the bad decisions and the interceptions, and I think Sean Payton can help correct that. I think that's one of the reasons that made Drew Brees successful, because he was on the same page with Sean Payton, and he wasn't afraid of smaller passes. He can still throw it deep. And that's the thing that Jameis does. Jameis is going to have a short leash on him. He's going to have to make sure he's making quality throws. And I don't think Sean Payton's going to put him in that situation. Now, what would put him in a situation to feel like he's got to, win the game on these long throws, having bad defense? This is where they're going to have to be aggressive in the draft. They're going to need a linebacker. They're going to need a cornerback. They could shore up the front side opposite of Cameron Jordan now that Davenport's gone. So I think they're going in the right direction here. I just think they need to do well in the draft. I don't think Ty Montgomery is going to make a big difference. James Hurst, they had to sign his offensive lineman in the system. They had to keep him around, but I'm just not sure that they're going to be able to pull off what they need to pull off to have a successful year. And I think it's all going to be built around Jameis Winston. It's going to be whether he passes or fails. And you like how he uses passes because he's a quarterback.
Yeah, you can say passes or intercepts. That's fair, too.
There you go.
So, and just to let people know, Taysom Hill's restructured deal actually is going to save the Saints a bunch of money. Everybody freaking out that Taysom Hill's getting money. Let's talk about it. The deal gets him $12.159 million, all guaranteed for 2021, but let's discuss. There's an extra signing bonus of $9.686 million. Now, his base salary, Taysom Hill, is only $1.034 million, and his bonus is spread over 5 years, that $9.686 million. So that signing bonus is spread over 5 years, not right now. So $1.9 million per season allotted from 2022 through 2025. Now, let's also look at the facts. All the years of the contract that the Saints have with Taysom Hill are voidable, and there will be no dead cap money cost to the Saints to get out of the deal after 2 years. So, Taysom Hill is only costing the Saints $8.4 million against the cap in 2021, saving them $7.5 million. And he has a $7.7 million cap hit in 2022, which is less. So that is something to look at. Taysom Hill, the restructuring of his deal, is actually looking out for New Orleans long term, especially if it doesn't work out with Taysom Hill. And they're not spending a ton of money on Jameis Winston, giving him a 1-year deal, and his is based laden in incentives as well, with $7 million out there in incentives. So he is in a place, too, where he has to prove himself. Essentially, New Orleans is going to test it out, see how it goes, and they can let go of either one of these guys without too much of a hit to their cap, which is a good thing for them moving forward. Tampa Bay Buccaneers re-signed, franchise tag Chris Godwin, and they're going to have to work on that deal. No surprise, Rob Gronkowski, 1 year, $8 million, worth up to $10 million. He has re-signed with Tampa. And Shaquille Barrett has re-signed on a 4-year, $68 million deal. $36 million of that is fully guaranteed. Levante David has re-signed on a 2-year deal worth $25 million. And shout out to the kicker Ryan Suckup, who signed a 3-year deal worth $12 million with $6.25 million guaranteed, and he'll get $8.25 of that $12 million over the first 2 years of his contract. To shout out to a kicker who's getting bank for staying with Tampa and making those field goals for Brady and those extra points as well. What are your thoughts on Tampa's move so far?
Yeah, I think it's still, the rich get richer sometimes. You had Tom Brady in the mix and people freak out and do different things. Well, they did different things. They won a Super Bowl. He attracted players. He had guys want to play. He had guys believe in him, and that was key. That was key to take everybody's game to the next level. they're not done yet. They still got some guys to sign, but I do like Levante David. You had to get that done. Shaq Barrett, I think that's an overinflated contract situation. I think he's great. I don't think he's one of the top pass rushers, but if that's what the market is, that's what it is. $36 million fully guaranteed on a 4-year, $68 million. And then, he can earn an additional $1 million per year in sack and playoff escalators. So that it's a crazy contract. Robert Gronkowski, you knew he was coming back. He said a long time ago, the only quarterback I'm going to play with is Tom Brady, and he's proved that. And he's willing to come back and roll it back, run it back, do it again. They had a franchise tag, Chris Godwin. So I like the moves they made. Again, like we said at the beginning, sometimes the best free agent signings are keeping your guys in the building, and they have every reason to believe in these guys. They just come off the Super Bowl. I look for them to be aggressive in the draft as well. On defense, they're going to need somebody up front. They're going to need another linebacker. I even think they're going to go after some running backs as well, because I'm not sure what's going to pan out here. Ronald Jones is the guy under contract with Keyshawn Vaughn. Keyshawn Vaughn shortened by injury in his rookie season, so maybe they see something in Keyshawn Vaughn, but they're not done yet, but they're on their way, and it looks like they're on their way to another Super Bowl.
And I agree. Were you surprised with the Leonard Fournette situation that allegedly they wanted him back in Tampa, but it wasn't like an immediate re-signing of Leonard Fournette? Are you surprised that wasn't a deal that got done, especially if Tampa really did want to see him again?
Well, it's not a deal that got done because he wasn't a priority. Chris Godwin was a priority. Keeping Gronk happy was a priority. Levante David, Shaq Barrett, these were priorities. Now you can address the Leonard Fournette situation. I think that time has passed where Leonard Fournette knows his days are numbered anywhere he goes. He carries some baggage. He's a quality running back. It's just, is he going to be happy with that role play situation like he was in? We're also probably not going to see LaShawn McCoy anymore at 155 years old. So look for them to bring somebody else in. Look for them to draft a quarterback here soon, too. Maybe not this year, but if I was them and one came to me, I would draft a quarterback. And who better to sit behind than a Tom Brady? Hey, if I'm a rookie and you draft me, I'm willing to sit behind and learn from the GOAT all day long. That's going to make me better if I have to do it 2 years, 3 years, a la Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. So why wouldn't you want that? I think that if a quarterback falls to them at the right spot, they're going to grab a quarterback to replace Tom Brady in the future, 2-3 years down the road. Don't nobody at me. I think some of the guys that they have under contract are huge right now, but they were definitely aggressive and definitely heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I think Tampa is definitely making the right moves, and I would anticipate that franchise tagging Chris Godwin is probably having maybe Brady have a conversation with him saying, hey, young buck, I'm not the highest paid quarterback. I'm nowhere close, but look at how many championships I've won. So you got the franchise tag. You're going to make bank this year, and if you want to have longevity with me here and longevity with this team, maybe be smart about your money. I want you to get paid, but I also want this team to be able to get as many assets as they can. The Chicago Bears seem very interesting. They have Nick Foles, and they just decided to bring in former starter of the Cincinnati Bengals and former backup who became a starter with Dak Prescott going down of the Dallas Cowboys and Andy Dalton. He is back he is going to Chicago to fight with Nick Foles to be the starter, and Allen Robinson is back on the team as well. What are your thoughts on Chicago's moves?
Andy Dalton was potentially the 33rd best quarterback in the league. When you have 32 teams, that's not a good situation. 1 year, $10 million, good for him. They can blow up to $13 million with incentives. I don't think he's the answer. I think they're going to be in the market to draft a quarterback as well. I'm not sure what's going to happen there with Foles. You take a look at this team as an all-around situation. Take a look at Allen Robinson, giving him the franchise tag. That was what they had to do to keep him there. Otherwise, you were going to be left with a Darryl Mooney. That was it. Maybe Anthony Miller. So they definitely have some work cut out for him in the draft.
Yeah.
I think that it's a tremendous opportunity for them to bulk up. Jimmy Graham's 150 years old. Cole Kmet looks like the guy that's going to take that over, no problem. Their defense, they got some aging thumpers back there at linebacker. They need some help in the secondary in the draft. But again, they look like they were signing the right guys, doing the right thing for their team, received the franchise tag, Allen Robinson, getting Andy Dalton. Yeah, I know it's Andy Dalton, but they were in the mix for Russell Wilson as well up until the last minute. I mean, they were going hard after Russell. So I think they're heading in the right direction. I just think you're going to have patience, Bears fans. This isn't going to happen overnight. This you came so close a year or two ago, but now it looks like we're just heading downhill. So there's going to be some more changes. There's going to be some more signings, and they need to be super aggressive, and they can't afford mistakes in the draft if they want to be competitive this year.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Chicago's really going to have to figure things out because, speaking of the draft, the capital that the Detroit Lions have is awesome. They didn't just get... This is the thing. I mean, I think the Lions made out. Now, I respect Matt Stafford, but you get a former number 1 overall quarterback who's played in a Super Bowl, which Matt Stafford has not. Jared Goff making that bank, son. So, I mean, like, he comes in, he makes the bank, he's the number 1 overall pick. Then he gets traded to you for Matt Stafford, who's only got, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 years maybe left, 3 max. So you bring in Jared Goff, and you get a 2021 third-round pick, and you get first-round picks in 2022 and 2023. So I think the Detroit Lions made out. You got 2 first-rounders coming up. You got a third-rounder in this draft coming up. You got a younger quarterback who's played in the Super Bowl, and you have to give up Matt Stafford. Now, I respect Matt. I like Matt. I think Matt's competitive, and I think he's good, and I think he can be above the equator line of quarterbacks in the NFL, and I do think he could have been elite, but he was on a team where there was a lot of struggle, a lot of issues, too many issues to deal with, issues with coaching, issues with skill players, issues on the defense. So it ultimately, I think, gobbled him up. But for the Detroit Lions to get Jared Goff plus 3 picks, 2 of those being first-rounders, I think they definitely made out in this one in a big, big way. They bring in Tim Boyle as well, a backup in Green Bay to Aaron Rodgers. And speaking of Green Bay, they bring in Jamal Williams. Now, Jamal Williams is staying in the NFC North and playing for a rival here now. Jamal Williams coming into Detroit. Detroit, is a stable of about 10 running backs a season. And so Jamal Williams coming into this shows you, as I would like to think, that A.J. Dillon and the re-signing of Aaron Jones is going to mean that they'll both get some time in Green Bay, as Jamal Williams was finally let go. Tyrell Williams, who has never really been a number 1 guy, he's coming in. You would imagine that Tyrell Williams, who's been a 2, could take over for the loss of 2, Marvin Jones there in Detroit. So you could look to him for that. And then Josh Hill coming in at the tight end position. Josh Hill having been in New Orleans with Drew Brees. What are your thoughts on Detroit's move so far?
Yeah, I'm okay with the quarterback situation. I definitely agree with you where they made out a lot better by making that move. And again, it's a fresh start for a guy who's number 1 overall pick. It looks like that play for Jamal Williams is going to complement DeAndre Swift very well. Hopefully that's the 1-2 punch they're looking for. I don't think Kerryon Johnson's the answer anymore. It doesn't look like Adrian Peterson's going to be around anymore at 184 years old. I look at Jamal Williams saying he can catch the ball. And if you're in a PPR league, that's imperative. That's important. And he's a handcuff for DeAndre Swift. I don't think he's good enough to draft unless it's very late rounds and he falls to me. I don't think I'm going to pursue him, though. Tyrell Williams is a strong get. They're going to need to get a wide receiver in the draft, though. They're going to need to get a lineman in the draft. They're going to need to get some defensive players in the draft, and linebacker and in the secondary. So I think re-signing Romeo Okwara is huge. It's a big deal for him. 3 years, $39 million, $20 million fully guaranteed. So I think it's and they got Michael Brockers on the cheap here. He wouldn't restructure his contract with the Rams, so they traded him for a 7th-round pick. This could be a steal for them at a defensive front. Anytime you can get pressure on a quarterback, you're going to have a good chance to win games, and that's what Michael Brockers brings to that front, along with Romeo Okwara. This is going to be a front that needs to be addressed if you're an opposing offensive coordinator. I look for them to draft a linebacker, draft a safety. I look for them to draft an offensive lineman, probably a guard, and definitely some help at receiver. So they're not done yet. It'd be interesting to see if they're able to sign any other free agents, but I think the loss of Kenny Golladay is going to be huge. But as you see, Kenny Galladay's not signed yet. He's still talking to Cincinnati and the Giants, so it's going to be interesting how that works out. I like Tyrell Williams, though. I like Quintez Cephas. I think he's going to be he's a sleeper guy, Quintez Cephas, right now. So keep your eye on Detroit, the rest of the free agency, and in the draft here. I think they got some work to do, but it looks like they're heading in the right direction.
You know, I don't know why, but I see Kenny Galladay in Miami. So I do. I see him in Miami with Tua. It's just a thought. I know it's not the one that, people are talking about, but I see him down there. Green Bay, I'm going to write this on our board here on Facebook and YouTube Live, because this is the only move they made, and it was a big one to make. So I'm going to make it the biggest name I've written thus far. The Green Bay Packers have re-signed running back Aaron Jones on a 4-year contract worth $48 million, $13 million signing bonus. The deal includes $20 million over the first 2 years. A $7 million roster bonus is due on the third day of the league year in 2023, with $16 million due in 2023 and $12 million in 2024. What are your thoughts on this balloon contract, Aaron Jones making that bank to stay in Green Bay?
Yeah, I think if you're going to make one move, that was the move to make. I mean, I wouldn't. There was rumors he was going to Miami, but if you can get him for 4 years, $48 million. I know a lot of people say that the running back situation is overrated and the running backs are a dime a dozen and all this. That's not true. Ask Aaron Rodgers, okay? Because it was a time where Aaron Jones went down and it was Jamal Williams, and it was a difference. It was a noticeable difference. So I think that was the smartest move they could do. I like Devontae Adams. I think they need to utilize Allen Lazard a little better, but I think they're utilizing him and Valdez-Scantling. I think they're okay on offense. They could use a splash. They could use another receiver, but they've needed a receiver for a couple years, and they haven't blinked. So, and look what happened. Last year, Aaron Rodgers came around to Matt LaFleur. You heard that name again. That's right. His brother's the OC in another team in the NFL. You take a look at Robert Tonyan. You take a look at some of the guys they have up and coming. I think they still have some growth. I think they still have some opportunity with the guys in-house. Not surprised they only made that one move. They're going to be drafting defensive front guys, defensive secondary guys, and they're going to draft the tight end if they can find a good one. But there's only one or two good ones in this draft, so it might be the Robert Tonyan show. But I think Green Bay has done well being frugal. I know it's been frustrating for Aaron Rodgers, but they did bring Aaron Jones back for him, so that's a plus.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing to see what they've, the fact that Aaron Jones is there for Aaron Rodgers, and to see what he will do with this contract and how he'll go forward with this contract. Minnesota has only made one move offensively. When you look at skill position, wide receiver Chad Beebe is there with you to try and find some depth at wide receiver, agreeing to terms on a contract. Patrick Peterson, who was drafted by the Arizona Cardinals, he is there on a 1-year deal. Patrick Peterson used to be like the guy. He was somebody that people were looking to all the time, and if you were in leagues where you could draft individual defensive players, people were going after Patrick Peterson. What are your thoughts on Minnesota's move so far?
I question a couple of them. I think they did a couple of things they needed to do. I think the Patrick Peterson thing was one of them. They still need help at safety, but I think having Patrick Peterson on one corner and Jeff Gladney, the young player, on the other corner, I think that says a lot. I think you're going to have guys that are going to be shutting down the corners, and that's going to be opening things up for the linebackers and for the rush guys, the Danielle Hunter, I should say. Sorry, Danielle Hunter. It's going to open things up for these guys to get some more sacks on the front end. They're not done yet. I'm not happy with where they're at, but it is what it is. They're going to have to make some splashes. They have to get some offensive linemen. But the offensive linemen don't grow on trees. That would be a big darn tree if it was. They're going to have to get somebody in the draft.
Yeah, so Minnesota's got some work to do, of course, and they'll have to figure that out as they go. Minnesota has lost some talent over the years. Stephon Diggs going to Buffalo was one of the best moves for Buffalo, not so much for Lake Minnetonka. So that is an issue that we have seen with Minnesota as they try to figure things out. We have the NFC East to get to. Still the NFC West. We'll take our final step aside of our Fantasy Football Power Hour here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, with Mike Sofka of Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com. Well, we're on the fast break, and you're listening from our great partners in Central and Upstate New York. Make sure to join Winning Fantasy Football, the group, on Facebook.
Avicoli's Restaurant, located right at the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road, is proud to be your local neighbor, growing with you for over 20 years. We're open 7 days a week for lunch, dinner, and drinks. For takeout, delivery, or catering, call us at 315-622-5100. When you order online and use our promo code AVS10, you will save 10% on your online purchase at myavicolis.com. And make sure to join us monthly for our live on-site broadcasts centered around Liverpool athletics. Avicoli's, your local, trusted neighbor right at the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road.
Having peace of mind when you're out of town that your furry-loving friend is safe and sound means taking them to Canine Campground, because we all know that when it comes to the love of our pets, it goes well beyond the call of duty to make sure they're safe and sound. Right, Lily? So take a ride to 242 Johnson Street in East Syracuse, New York, and see Canine Campground and where your dog will be staying in the classic cabin, the executive cabin, the grand cabin, or of course the luxury cabin, because if you know Lily, you know she loves luxury. Now you don't have to wait to the last minute to find a family member or a friend that'll take your dog for a few days. Call Canine Campground at 315-299-4013. That's 315-299-4013. Their drop-off and pickup times are Monday through Sunday. Check K9campground.com for more information. That's the letter K, the number 9, and campground spelled with a K.com. K9campground.com.
When you're going out of town, bring your dog to Canine Campground.
Trapper's Pizza Pub, located on 5950 Butternut Drive in East Syracuse. Right off of Bridge Street is your local community supporter right around the corner. Join us on site at Trapper's Pizza Pub for our live monthly broadcast supporting Central New York student athletes and their sports programs. Call 315-438-4444 for more information. And find us on Facebook and Instagram at Trapper's Pizza Pub. Trapper's Pizza Pub, your local community supporter right around the corner.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. Inside the Cafe Kubal studios, we're hanging out with you in the Fantasy Football Power Hour. Mike Sofka of Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com, myself, Dan Tortora of wakeupcalldt.com. Together we are winning fantasy football. Together we help you to win fantasy football. That's our goal, and that's what we're here to try and do, and that's why we're bringing you fantasy football advice all year round, because we never stop, and you shouldn't either. And if you need the help, we're here for it. So we're very, very much proud to bring you fantasy football every single week, every week on Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, exclusively on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where we do this broadcast presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub in the Fantasy Football Power Hour. This week we moved to Thursday due to the NCAA tournament, and Mike and I are going division by division, telling you about all of the moves of this time period, the free agency frenzy, and giving you an opportunity to look at it by division to see what the teams are doing around the country. So the next one that we have up to take a look at is going to be the NFC West, Mike, and the Arizona Cardinals. They're doing some interesting things here, because Fitzgerald's like 1,000 years old, but he's been so great over the years for them. And you think about what he was to this team, right, and what he's been all this time. Well, A.J. Green was that big guy to Cincinnati. And now A.J. Green is an Arizona Cardinal. If you're Kyler Murray and you're looking at your stable and the people that are coming in, you got A.J. Green now on the team and all this help. You got DeAndre. I mean, who would have thunk that a team would have an A.J. Green, Larry Fitzgerald, DeAndre Hopkins type of world that they could live in over, recent history here in the 2020s. And not only that, but bringing in, of course, Mr. J.J. Watt. It seems like when you leave Houston and you're talented, the most viable decision is to go to Arizona. So what are your thoughts on A.J. Green, J.J. Watt, and company? As I think Arizona is making some of the biggest splashes, showing that they want to win, they want the talent, and they want the locker room out there on the West Coast for the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, well, they needed to make a splash, and they're going to continue to need to make that splash in the draft. You take a look at their starters from last year, it looks like 5 of them from defense and 4 of them from offense are probably going to be gone. So they're going to need to continue to be aggressive. I like the Rodney Hudson. They finalized that with the Raiders for a 7th round pick. I like the A.J. Green. He's 5 years younger than Larry Fitzgerald, but you question what the situation is. And when you have a Hall of Fame type player, like first ballot Hall of Famer like Larry Fitzgerald, you kind of work things a little bit differently. See, a lot of people think you can manage everybody the same way. If you're a manager, you want to say you're managing everybody in the same way, but you're not really. You can't take a guy like Larry Fitzgerald and manage him the same way you would a mid-round draft pick rookie. Those two things aren't going to be the same. So you want to be firm, fair, and consistent with your dealings with people, but you can't. It sounds nice to treat everybody the same, but the reality is you can't do that. Everybody's at a different place. But I take a look at what they need to replace here, and they got their work cut out for them. I do like the J.J. Watt signing. I do like the Marcus Golden signing. I think they're heading in the right direction. They just need to continue to make some good moves. A.J. Green is not the move that's going to save everything. Look for them to draft another receiver. Not sure if Christian Kirk is going to work out long-term at all. Keyshawn Johnson, I'm not sure that experiment's done, but I don't think he's needed to step up before this and hasn't. So Kyler Murray's an excellent quarterback. Looks like Chase Edmonds might be the guy. I look for them to draft a running back, a wide receiver, offensive line. They need tight end help, but there's no tight end help in the draft. Otherwise, you're left with Max Williams. They got a lot of work cut out for them. Yes, I feel good about what they've done, but I think they could have been a little more aggressive in some key positions. They're going to need to have a perfect draft to make a good run at things next year.
Yeah, and it's going to be something to look at here as Arizona also signs Matt Prater away from, he spent his time in Detroit, also spent some time in Denver. He'll be their kicker. He's on a 2-year deal right now in Arizona. I think they got some talent, but some of that young stuff they tried to go with, I thought Christian Kirk was going to pan out, and he hasn't yet. So that's a big question mark, like you brought up, Mike, to see what Arizona can do from here. A.J. Green, I'm interested in the decision, and I want to see how it works out. He also has to stay healthy, and God willing, he does. The Los Angeles Rams, we talked about the trade a little bit earlier here, so I know it's not free agency, but a big move that they made. The Rams have only made 2 moves, so Matt Stafford coming on to the team here in the trade, and the Rams had to trade away a first-round pick in 2022, one in 2023, but you know that they're not ashamed to trade away first-round picks because they gave 2 of them to Jacksonville back-to-back 2020 and 2021 for Jalen Ramsey, so think about that. The Rams gave up picks in 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023 in the first round to get 2 players, Matt Stafford and Jalen Ramsey, banking on and hoping that those will pan out. They got linebacker Leonard Floyd to agree to a 4-year deal, $64 million, 32.5 of that is fully guaranteed at signing. What are your thoughts on the moves made by the Rams, which there's only a couple?
I like the fact that they saw an opportunity to get a guy that they thought can help them in the next couple of years in Matt Stafford. But as you pointed out, at what price? I mean, at what price are you doing business? Is Jalen Ramsey worth those 2 first-round picks? Is Matt Stafford worth those 2 first-round picks, plus Jared Goff, who was a number 1 overall pick, plus a third-round pick? I think they're overspending. They're always mortgaging the future, and that's a dangerous situation. They're always chasing. They're always trying to catch lightning in a bottle. Chasing refers to betting lingo. If you've ever seen or heard, or if you've ever had the experience yourself, you're in a casino or something, and you go on a losing streak, and you're like, well, I'm down $400. Let me get another $400. Let me get it back. I'll get my money back, then I'll stop. Then you're down $800, and you're like, okay, last time I'm going to go to $1,200, and that's it. And then, you know what I mean? You're chasing, and you don't make money chasing money. You make money creating money. You make money moving forward. You can't move forward if you've mortgaged the future. So this is dangerous for them. But they do have some outstanding pieces, and I like the Matt Stafford as an improvement over Jared Goff. I like the Leonard Floyd situation. I think that works for them. That works for him. That's fine. But they got. I don't think Michael Brockers is the answer on the left end. I don't think I don't think Josh Reynolds is going to be coming back soon. That's going to help a Van Jefferson get on the field with Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. So they have some good pieces. I like the upside of Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson. I like all those things, but they need to continue to get the right pieces in place because they have so mortgaged the future. If this doesn't work for them in the next year or two, we're not going to see the Rams in the playoffs anytime soon.
Yeah, the Rams really have to figure things out. They're banking on these veterans, and in the case of Matt Stafford, a guy that only has 1 to 3 years left, maybe 2 in the NFL as a starter. So it's, they're putting a lot out there. But if I'm the Lions or I'm the Jaguars, I'm thankful that the Rams are willing to do it. The San Francisco 49ers, the fullback position has kind of, tapered off in the NFL over the years. And it's with some teams it's meaningful, with other teams they kind of just let it go. And in the case of the San Francisco 49ers, they decided to keep Kyle Juszczyk with them, and he will be on this team for a little while. They got him to a 5-year contract, $27 million. So for a position that people don't really look to anymore, they signed him for 5 years long term. He's a guy that has been used in the passing game before. And it's funny how they give him 5 years, $27 million, where they've had multiple running backs and nobody's panned out. Now, you think that that's a big contract, especially for a position that not everybody has? Well, then I would love to welcome you into, it's like but wait, there's more, and that is the fact that Trent Williams has signed his contract with the San Francisco 49ers. Trent Williams re-signing 6 years, $138.06 million. $30.1 million is a signing bonus, $55.1 million in fully guaranteed money. The man has a 6-year deal at offensive tackle. Alex Mack is on a 1-year deal, $5.5 million at center. And then they went to defense with a defensive lineman, linebacker, and 2 corners. What are your thoughts on San Fran that could barely field a roster last year to play a game? Then they had to relocate for the end of their season to Arizona. They get Kyle Juszczyk and keep him for 5 years, and Trent Williams re-signs for 6 years. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, San Fran's an interesting situation, and don't be overly alarmed, San Fran fan, about that contract with Trent Williams. It's 6 years, $138 million, $30 million signing bonus, and $55 million fully guaranteed. Trent Williams is 33 years old. He's going to be 39, over 300 pounds, bumping with the guys in the end. It's not going to happen. So that's all fake money. Not all not all contracts are guaranteed. That's why the guaranteed money for for a position he's in and an age that he's at, that's a good thing to get. And don't forget, he took a 1-year gamble on himself last year. So he put it out there and he kind of gave up some money to get some money. So I like the position both teams played. He'll probably play another 3 years, if that, maybe 2. I'm looking at Samson, I keep mispronouncing his name, Abukum, and he signs that 2-year deal, and I'm not sure he's the answer on defense for them either. So look, this is the thing. 2 years, $12 million, max value of $13.5 million. He's going to be a plug-and-play type guy, but I don't think he's the answer. I don't think they did enough in free agency outside of Kyle Juszczyk. And Kyle Juszczyk, I'm happy for him. He's a great guy. When my son and I were at the Pro Bowl a couple years ago, he went out of his way to, talk to us and we had a good time. We had a good situation with him. So it was always nice to see players like that do well and be able to cash in. He's an integral part of what they do. He's the reason why they're able to run the ball there. And that's another thing. They need a running back. Is Raheem Mostert going to be healthy? Jerick McKinnon didn't work out. Tevin Coleman didn't work out. They're going to have to draft a running back. They're probably going to have to find another tight end. If Kittle goes down again, I don't think they can keep Jordan Reed. I don't think any of these other guys are worthy, and they need help on defense bad. So they're still a work in progress. But even though they can come back and be the most improved team over last year because they had everybody hurt. So they need help on the back end. They need a couple corners. They need a safety. They need some presence up front. They still have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, they definitely do in San Francisco, a team that is now going on 2 years removed from the Super Bowl. So interesting here to see, where they're at the time being. And, to take a look at the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle's an interesting thing, too, because, Seattle, another guy moving within the confines of the division and going from the Rams to the Seahawks. And that is the gentleman that's Gerald Everett. And, you and I, week to week, kind of cut and paste the conversation about Gerald Everett because him and Tyler Higbee were splitting time in L.A. And so, Seattle obviously needs a tight end, and they made a move for Gerald Everett. What are your thoughts on this, that they're bringing him in? What does it do for Tyler Higbee fantasy-wise with the Rams? What does it do for Gerald Everett fantasy-wise with the Seahawks?
I think it helps them both. I mean, why sit there and cannibalize each other? Why sit there and have a situation where you don't know which guy to play on any given week? You can't count on guys like that for fantasy football. So this makes great sense for fantasy football. Gerald Everett's a good blocker as well. They're going to need help, though. They're going to need help in Seattle. Their work's not done for them either. They're going to need wide receiver help. They'll probably draft a couple wide receivers. Chris Carson's not going to be around any longer. Are they cashing in on DJ Dallas, Travis Homer, or is it finally going to be Rashad Penny? I don't think the answer is any of those guys. I think it's going to be a shared backfield, mired in muck, and it's just a bad situation for fantasy players. So hopefully, this will work out for them in the draft. But they got a lot of work to do in Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle's got a lot of work to do, and they need to please the guy that has been their quarterback for so long, and that is Russell Wilson. I still think the opportunity of the Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson straight-up trade, send one to Seattle and one to Houston, could be something to make them both happy with a change of scenery. So, and speaking of a change of scenery, our final change of scenery would be for us to go to the NFC East. The NFC East, which has been obviously to a lot of people called the NFC least this past season. There was a time where we thought that a team with 4 wins was going to make it and into the playoffs, and not only make it into the playoffs, but to have a home playoff game, which is insane. We got a message here from Greg saying, Arizona retirement community, I really don't think A.J. Green has a lot left on those tires. Well, the thing is, he's been hurt, and he went from the number 1 guy to obscurity. I told Mike that I wasn't going to draft him for, a couple of years. We talked about Mike had him in the top 15. I did not, and it was because of injury. It was because I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to deal with the consistently inconsistent. Is he going to be out there? Is he not going to be out there? So A.J. Green is yet a question mark again, but he's got a short-term deal in Arizona to see what he's got. Maybe it's just to say that he was there. Who knows? I have no idea. So the Dallas Cowboys, I'm sure it's more than that, but you can't expect a lot from A.J. Green, especially in recent history. The Dallas Cowboys did what they needed to do, Mr. Sofka. They signed Dak Prescott. They did not franchise tag him again. What I like about his new deal is that he has a no-trade clause. He also has a no-franchise tag. Like he has an extra thing written in there that they can't tag him anymore, which is a pretty interesting thing. I didn't know you could do that. I mean, I know you could do anything in contracts, but I've never heard of it. So what do you think about, the Dallas Cowboys? Obviously, they took care of business, and Dak is back. And Dak is making that money, and just for people to know here with just a few minutes left, so we'll be getting you these teams here. 4-year, $160 million, maxes out at $164 with $126 million guaranteed. We just talked about a contract with Trent Williams where it looks really big, but it's $55.1 million guaranteed, and it's $138.06. This one is different. $160 million contract, could be $164, but $126 of it is guaranteed. Dak finally got that contract. I don't know what the heck happened with Jerry Jones. If he finally got his money from his checking to his savings to go through, I'm not sure. What are your thoughts on the Dallas Cowboys, who obviously took care of business with the only thing they really needed to do in the offseason?
Yeah, that was one. If you're going to do one thing,
you got one job,
right?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that's what they did with Dak Prescott. Finally, locking that situation up. I'm happy for Dallas and Dak Prescott, but they got a lot of work cut out for them. I don't think they made a splash anywhere else. I'm not sure they're going to be able to either. They're going to have to draft incredibly well, losing 4 starters on the defense. They need an edge rusher. They need safety help. They need cornerback help. And they might need a center, offensive lineman as well. So they got an uphill battle, but I like the pieces on offense if everybody can stay healthy. They have 1 or 2 bright spots on defense in Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch, but they need a lot more help on defense.
Yeah, they definitely do, and we're going to run through these quick here as we just have a few minutes left. The New York Giants decided to go with Devontae Booker, bringing him onto the team. Devontae Booker, somebody who has obviously not done a ton in his career, and he's going to get a shot with the Giants. And John Ross, who is supposed to be the speedster in Cincinnati. What are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, I think the John Ross thing makes a lot of sense because he does have wheels. I think they're not done, though. They could be looking to bring in a Kenny Golladay still. Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard. I'm not sure these are guys that are going to work. They do have some upside, both those guys still. Devontae Booker, I think that's an overinflated deal. They're just looking for somebody to step in should Saquon go down again because he runs with reckless abandon. So look for him to start running out of bounds more. I think the Leonard Williams thing makes a lot of sense to put the franchise tag on him because they're going to need help along that front as well. They're going to need to get somebody else, and they're going to need to look at a tackle in the draft.
Yeah, in Philadelphia, we can just glaze over, just like with their head coach situation. They're late to the party. They haven't done anything in free agency, so we could give them a giant zero there. But the Washington football team, still no name, and they just like having quarterbacks that are 100 years old. Ryan Fitzpatrick, 1 year, $10 million, could max out at $12 million. They're going to give this man $10 million to be on the team this year. Lamar Miller, another guy, running back, long in the tooth. He's coming. Curtis Samuel didn't pan out with Carolina getting drafted there. What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, outside Antonio Gibson and maybe J.D. McKissick in PPR, there's a lot of has-beens and should-have-been and could-have-been guys. And, they're just adding Lamar Miller to that mix. I'm talking about a Bryce Love. I'm talking about a Peyton Barber. I'm talking about Jonathan Williams and Michael Warren. None of these names excite anybody. Antonio Gibson's the guy in a PPR, maybe on the back end, J.D. McKissick. But I'm looking at Ryan Fitzpatrick. He could be the quarterback. Although Taylor Heineke performed best out of all 4 quarterbacks that played Tampa Bay on the route to their Super Bowl, guess who performed the best? Taylor Heineke had the best game out of all those guys. So, Taylor Heineke is a young quarterback. I'm not sure. They may draft a quarterback if the right one falls to them, but they need some help throughout their roster. So hopefully this will work out for them. I did see they signed their kicker too, but the biggest get for them, Curtis Samuel. Lined up opposite of Terry McLaurin, you'll have Kelvin Harmon in the slot. I think this makes a lot of sense, and then you have a lot of upside with Antonio Gandy Golden. So I vote for Ryan Fitzpatrick to be the starter for most, if not all, the year for Washington, regardless of whether they draft a quarterback or not.
Yeah, very interesting that they parted ways with Alex Smith in his comeback and then brought in his grandfather, Ryan Fitzpatrick. So it's very interesting. But as always, Mike, I appreciate your time. Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com, the group Winning Fantasy Football on Facebook. And we ran through the entire NFL and all the moves being made. So thank you, Mike, for this. This is an extreme broadcast for anybody out there that's playing fantasy and just an NFL fan in general. So thank you for your part in that.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. So make sure you check us out again, Winning Fantasy Football on Facebook. Check me out at Hall of Fame Fantasy Football. I'm going to start kicking up some deep content here real soon, so look for that in the next week.
All right, we'll talk with you soon, Mike. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Dan.
Take care. So that coming from Mike Sofka once again, as we're here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets that thing called life. Want to give a big shout out to Papa Joe and, of course, Mike for going through the entire NFL with me. If you needed to know about free agency and you needed a crash course, we just gave it to you. Share it with your friends. It's going to automatically go to facebook.com/wakeupcallDT's archives. It's going to be on our archives, too, on wakeupcalldt.com's fantasy football page. And, of course, it'll be on youtube.com immediately. Make sure you're watching and listening to Wake Up Call every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on facebook.com/livenowdt, youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, and mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt, as well as on wakeupcalldt.com. And you can check our archives on YouTube, like I said, iHeartRadio, iTunes and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, MixLR, TuneIn, Stitcher, and Podbean. So check us out there. And a big thanks to our beautiful and wonderful companies we're proud to work with in the community of Central and Upstate New York: Cafe Kubal, Carvel DeWitt, Wildcat Sports Pub, Avicoli's, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, Chick-fil-A Cicero, Pizza Man, Honda City of Liverpool, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, the Millhouse Market, and MonPazPopcorn.com. Go to MonPazPopcorn.com and use my promo code DT20 for 20% off. In the meantime, Facebook at Wake Up Call DT, Twitter at Call DT, and Instagram at WakeUpCall_DT. God bless. No stress. Do your best. I'll talk with you soon. NCAA tournament starts today. Get your picks in right now for the bracket challenge. Can't wait to see you there, and I appreciate you so very much. Have a great day, and take care of yourselves, and be good, everybody.